Hey, it's Kirkpatrick with Gnarly Routes, and in today's video, I'm going to compare the stock Explorer suspension that comes on the KTM XC-W and EXC-F bikes to the WP Pro components. We're going to be looking at the WP air cone valve fork, the spring cone valve fork, and the WP track shock. If I was given a bike and was told I could only do one modification to it, it would absolutely be setting up the suspension for my weight and skill level. Having suspension that is set up properly makes it easier and safer to go fast. There's nothing like trying to push that edge of speed and not knowing what your bike's gonna do when you hit something. Knowing what the bike is gonna do is key. I wanna be able to hit something, and before I hit it, already know what my bike is going to do. It's that predictability and comfort that makes it easier to go fast. When it comes to suspension, there's a lot of options that you have when setting it up. You can do something as simple as just putting springs in it for your weight and then making clicker adjustments. You can send the suspension off for a revalve, or you can completely remove the OEM suspension and put on a product like the WP cone valve fork and track shock. The OEM equipment that comes on the KTM EXC-F and XC-W range of bikes is the Explorer fork and shock. The fork is an open chamber design, and it's set up stock generally for more trail riding. In my opinion, it's very soft, and so the Explorer set of suspension that I'm going to be using has been set up by Solid Performance, and they've valved it for my skill level and weight. And I'm going to compare it to the set of suspension I've been using on this bike for over a year now, which is the air cone valve fork and the track shock. At Gnarly Routes, we get a lot of messages on social media and via email about suspension setups. A lot of people are under the impression that the stock equipment that comes on these bikes is not capable of being set up. A lot of people default to wanting cone valve forks, and yes, if you can afford them, it's the way to go. They're awesome. The performance is great, but the stock equipment that comes on this bike is very, very good, and if set up properly, you can haul ass on it, and it's predictable and good to ride. I'm riding in Post, Texas today. I'm gonna ride here on the Pro component suspension, and then I'm gonna switch over to the OEM fork and shock and ride it back to back. So I'm gonna suit up, I'm gonna go ride the next couple days, and then report back on what I find. As far as the air cone valve fork goes, I've been on this fork for 2 years now on our Gnarly Routes tours. It's the same fork that Russ uses on his 500 and that he used on his 350 last year. The things that stand out to me about the air cone valve fork is the versatility. If you go to a motocross track, it's really easy to pump up the air pressure to compensate for the higher speeds and the jumps that you'll find on a motocross track, where this fork is set up for off-road use, but I can still go to the motocross track, bump up the air pressure, and then when I go ride trails, I can let some out and have it work great on the trails without having to change spring rates or valving or that sort of thing. Another thing that also stands out to me that I really like is how light the front end feels when I'm riding challenging terrain. The air fork is, I think, 3 pounds lighter than the spring cone valve fork, and also lighter than the OEM fork. And you can really feel it whenever you're getting the front end up to get over obstacles or turn around quickly, or even at the end of a long day when you're tired and it's just easier to make the front end do what you want it to in technical stuff. When it comes to the spring cone valve fork, this fork I've spent the most time on. I've had a set on my bike since 2014, and to me it's the most versatile fork in that you can get it set up to where in slow going, really technical terrain, you have a lot of comfort and a lot of plushness, but then on big hits off-road, it will firm up great and still feel comfortable. Now the air cone valve fork will still firm up, but in square edge braking bumps and successive bumps, I feel that I get more comfort out of the spring cone valve fork than I do the air cone valve fork. The air cone valve is not unpredictable, I just get more harshness and just I get more feedback in my hands than I do on the spring cone valve fork. The spring cone valve fork to me also corners better. It seems to settle in the stroke whenever you're cornering, and the front end's a little bit lower, and it seems to stay down in the ruts and corner better. So to me, if I had the choice of out of the 3 of these forks, I would pick the spring cone valve fork. It's much more expensive than any of the other ones, but it's a higher performing fork in my opinion. If budget's a concern, the air cone valve fork is a great option because it's not as much as a spring cone valve fork. You get a ton of versatility in that you can change the air pressure, and you also get a lighter feeling handling. It's not a busy feel. It doesn't make the bike deflect. It's just easier to move the front of the bike around with the air cone valves than the spring cone valves. So if you're a trail rider, and that's the majority of the riding that you do, I would recommend the air cone valve fork. If you're a racer, doing GNCCs, Works, Hare and Hounds, National Enduros, if you are racing, I would say the spring cone valve fork would be the best way to go. Now, yes, it's a big purchase. These are very expensive items, but look at it as an investment into your bike, and it's something that you can move from bike to bike. The first set of cone valve forks that I purchased was in 2014. They were used, and I still use them today on one of my bikes. And so that's almost 6 years of use that I've had. I've had to replace the bushings multiple times. I service them regularly, and they are still in great shape and still perform well. So look at it as something that you will grow with as a rider. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to this suspension, even suspension of any kind, even if it's just servicing your stock equipment, look at it as an investment into making you a safer rider, and it's something also that saves energy, and that is speed. It's something that can instantly make you a better rider without you really having to go out and work for it. So I just went and rode with the air cone valve, and now I'm going to put the stock Explorer fork and shock on this 300 XC-W TPI and go ride some more. I did race for a full year on a stock Explorer shock, so I know that shock is plenty capable of going fast. I won multiple Texas Enduro overalls with that shock, and the biggest thing that I notice from the cone valve fork, both of them, and the Explorer fork and the Explorer shock and the track shock, so when you move to the pro component equipment, to me, it's the oh shit moments that really make the pro component suspension stand out. It is designed for racing, and it is mind-blowing the stuff that I've hit thinking that, you know, it's gonna be really bad or that I'm gonna go over the bars, and the stuff soaks it up. And so to me, when I'm racing, that stuff just begs to be pushed. And I wish I could push it, you know, as far as it can be pushed. So I just got in. I'm gonna put the stock stuff on that Solid Performance has revalved. It's the fork and shock. We'll put that on. I'll have to recheck sag because it's a different shock, obviously. And then also the Explorer fork is shorter than the WP cone valve fork is. So get that swapped out. Okay, I just finished riding the Explorer fork and shock for the first time on this 300 XC-W TPI, and my first impressions or first thought was, wow. I knew that the shock could perform well and that it was gonna have a great feel, but I'm really impressed with the front end. Out here where I'm riding today, it's extremely dry slick, hard packed ground, lots of loose gravelly rock, and the front end was so planted. I was able to brake much more aggressively on the front than I was on the air cone valve fork earlier. Now, I could go race this stock Explorer stuff that's been revalved by Solid Performance tomorrow, and I think I could win on it. I mean, it's, you know, it didn't do anything unpredictable. It didn't do anything that scared me. You know, I had a couple hard hits and some holes that it just ate right up. I do want to ride it at a place that has some more acceleration and braking chop and some square edge stuff, because there's not much of that where I rode today. The place I rode today is more kind of like what a Texas Enduro is going to be like. We don't get a lot of braking bumps that develop. It's pretty smooth trail, and so this setup worked great. I loved the way the shorter fork made the chassis feel. It's really good. So that's a testament to, you know, if you've got stock stuff and you're not happy with it, you know, send it off and have it revalved. A lot of people's thoughts, we get so many questions, can the stock stuff work? Of course it can. You know, invest in a good tuner that can set it up. If you're a guy that loves nice parts on your dirt bike and has the budget for it, go for the cone valve forks. They're great. The PDS, the stock Explorer shock, works great when paired with a cone valve fork. And then if you want to take it to the next level and ride what the factory guys ride, you could get the cone valve fork and the track shock and be good to go. Another thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to suspension, you know, if you're just getting into the sport or a C level or a B level rider, what I would encourage you to do is get your stuff revalved, find a tuner that you like, that you trust, and use them, because and it's not always going to be perfect the first time. You know, tuners, they've got a range that they kind of go into, and you know, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of tweaking until a tuner and a rider really mesh together. And the more you can read up and understand what your clicker adjustments do, the more you can get out of your suspension. You're spending, you know, if you're spending $7 grand on pro component suspension, but you don't know how to click on it, to me that's a waste of money. You need to learn how to tune your suspension to get the most out of it, and also you know, give a tuner some time. I've been blown away with Solid Performance, the way that they do business, the way they follow up, their attention to detail. You know, when I get stuff from being serviced, it's almost like it's new when I get it. It's all wrapped up, packaged perfectly. If Evan sees anything that he doesn't like in the fork or anything that looks like it's wearing funny, he replaces it, and they are just really good at what they do. This Explorer set that I rode today has been, it's a setting that Evan and Mike Lafferty have developed, and it works really well. One really cool thing about the Explorer forks is that it is extremely easy to change spring rates. And so if you just purchased a KTM or a Husqvarna, you know, before you decide you've got to have your suspension done, make sure you check the owner's manual and see if your weight is correct for the stock springs. I have to go up one on the fork and one spring on the shock. And I rode a stock set last year on some of our Gnarly Routes tours that didn't have any revalve done, just springs, and it was good, but it wasn't, I wouldn't have wanted to race on it. This set that has been revalved is really good. So Evan, kudos to you and your team. You guys rock. And if you're watching this and are wondering who Evan is, he owns Solid Performance. They're in Pennsylvania. Those guys do all kinds of stuff. They're a KTM dealer. They're a WP authorized center. So if you want pro component stuff, they can get you dialed in, and yeah, give them some time. I myself, I usually prefer a little bit softer suspension. I like more comfort than I do being able to just smash huge hits, especially now because I don't really take that many chances when I'm out racing on big stuff. So I just want something that's going to be comfortable for me to go fast on all day, and I want it to be predictable. Always take notes. When you're out in the field making clicker adjustments, take notes of that so you can always revert back to original settings or what you liked. Don't be afraid to make clicker adjustments. Bleed your forks before you ride them every time. I always check sag before I ride, and yeah, have fun riding out there. Thanks for watching.